Tonight, I felt it very important to give a shir about the significant event, obviously, that happened this week. And that, of course, is the elections of the United States presidency. But what I want to do, and I've spoken obviously a lot about it in the past, is I want to, just again, review and talk about the entire scenario, but because in a certain sense, something has been finalized. And therefore, it's really very important now that it has been finalized, it's very important to see the scope, the totality of what is going on. So that's what I want to talk about tonight, And also something else, to restore the contribution, if I may use that word, of God, of the Rabbi Shalom, to this whole process. Because most people do not understand the input of the Rabbi Shalom to what has happened. And in many ways, that's crucial to understanding the underlying theme of what is going on. So I want to talk about that tonight. Very important idea. Before I begin, however, let me just say the dedications. This year should be a blessing and a merit for the health and success of the families of Regina Bas Yosef Reuven and Yeshaya ben Yisrael, Benjamin Wolf, Ben Tzvi Hersh, Baruch ben Benjamin Wolf. And this year should be a schus for them. Also, Esther Liba Bas Chaya Yafa should have a refuah shalema. And also, I want to add that Yosef Yehoshua ben Menucha should have a Yeshua Gedolah and be blessed with tremendous mazel and bracha and simcha, and it should have tremendous amount of siyata d'shmaya in the future. Shalom Leib, Shlomo Leib, Ben Fega should also have a refuah shalema, right? All of these people should certainly merit from the schos of the shir. Therefore, I feel it very important, very necessary, to really summarize in a total picture of what is going on in terms of the elections, because in many ways, the elections are spectacular. So we really have to understand, the underlying theme of what is happening. So to begin from the beginning, there's beginning really is earlier, but basically, in 2011, which is very interesting, there seemed to have been some type of a dinner. I'm not sure if it was a roast, which means that the whole point is somebody criticizes the president or other people and so on. But anyway, Barack Obama in many ways criticized, obviously very strongly, Donald Trump. And it was apparently it was quite severe, and it really embarrassed Donald Trump. And it was said over by somebody who knows Trump that Trump was very much, distressed by that criticism of Barack Obama. And what he did, he said to himself, why can't I run as president? Apparently he was very annoyed and aggrieved by what Barack Obama did. And from that moment on, that's what created or generated the idea that he would run, which of course is ironic, but it comes out that Obama was the one who initiated the thought, basically, to actively become or try to become President of the United States, which of course Trump eventually became once and now twice, which overthrows the term. Biden is really the third term of Obama. It now permanently rejects and ejects Obama from the whole political echelon of American politics. Very, very ironic and so on. But anyways, that's how it starts. And that's an important idea. In any case, now I feel, and I had said this previously, in fact, many of the ideas I may repeat and so on in a certain way. I believe Obama is Goig, right? He is the legendary Goig, and I once gave a whole shiur that shows that Goig, it's the person, whoever is Goig, essentially is a person who is a tremendous anti-Semite. But more than that, he is actively engaged in warring or in trying to destroy the Jews. And he can be different people. The Russian will decide ultimately who he is at the end. But the truth is, he could have been, and we find out from the Chazal, the rabbis, that it could have been Chizkiyahu, and Sancheiriv would have been Goig, and his army would have been Magog, long time ago, 700 BCE, and the Chazal say that the Russian wanted to make Sancheiriv Goig, right? And Chizkiyahu would be Mashiach ben Yosef, or David, whatever, and so on. But because Chizkiyahu HaMelech, the King Chizkiyahu, did not sing Shira for the incredible salvation that the Jews had, because in one night a Malach went through the camp of Sancheiriv and killed 183,000 soldiers, which is an incredible miracle, and he did not sing Shira, a song of glory to God. The Baruch Hashem took it away and decided to make Goig somebody else, and Mashiach ben Yosef, and so on. But we see, therefore, basically, that Goig can be anybody that has these qualifications. And I believe that Obama is Goig, and that the United Nations is more Goig. Because Goig unites the world against the Jewish people. And certainly Obama is, we know that really Obama despises the Jewish people, and so on, while getting into the history and so on. And the UN is really a conglomeration of all the nations of the world. In any case, so that makes it really, in a certain sense, poetic that Goig, otherwise known as Obama, is the one who initiated a Messianic figure to initiate the Messianic era, and I will explain. It's astounding when you think about the poetry of this, and so on, as we will see. Now, the question is, of course, okay, so in many ways he instigated, you're right, he instigated Trump to decide to run for presidency, which is what he did. So in 2015, that occurred in 2011, but in 2015, Trump famously came down the escalator, right? And he announced his candidacy, and obviously it was a shocking statement, because nobody expected Trump to run for president, not for real. I mean, he could have said, I'd like to, but for real? Why was that? We have to remember, that Trump, he was looked at as a clown. He's going to run for president? I mean, the man has no what? He's going to provide comic relief to the whole election process. This person has no military experience, right? He has not only military experience, but he has no political experience. You see? And besides that, he if he has no, and he has no legal experience, he's not a lawyer, he's a businessman, how can he run for president? So everybody thought it was ridiculous. And besides, the people running against him are what? They are 16 formidable individuals. They're governors, senators, right? So how in the world can he run against them? So everybody just laughed it off, you see. And besides that, his opponent is Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton is one of the most famous women in the world. She has unbelievable name recognition. Now, Trump has it also, but not as a political figure, but as a businessman. So everybody completely, basically, I would imagine 99.99% of America laughed it off, you see. And they said this is absolutely ridiculous, you see. And but notwithstanding that, this is what he said. In any case, the odds of him winning a presidency of the United States, like I say, with no real experience in any qualification, and not only that, but against Hillary, and not only that, Hillary's the Democratic Party. Democratic Party is very powerful, as we see how much money they can raise and so on, you know, and so much of America is Democratic. Nobody said he had a chance. He didn't have a chance, yet he won. What does that mean that he won? That clearly was a miracle by God. There's no question about that. A man that has no odds whatsoever to become president with no real qualifications should become the president against all the formidable factors that speak against him being president is beyond belief. Yet that's what the Moshe wanted. Now the question we ask ourselves, which I had gone to, spoken about many times and so on, is, what do you mean? If the Moshe wanted him to become president, which he did, who is this person? What does it mean? Especially when you see, when the Moshe does something which is miraculous, clearly there has to be a profound idea behind this. And we're not talking about, the Moshe selected, Trump to run. Okay, big deal. No, because in order for him to become president, it would require a massive miracle, right? A massive miracle. And that's why 99.9% of America laughed at this. So we have to ask ourselves, what is going on here? What is the importance of this person? Or who is this person that Moshe should perform a miracle, Shalika derech hateva, which means a real massive miracle? And I mentioned this, which most people never heard of, but we now know something which is very important, why God chose him. Because we know Esav is the brother of Yaakov, you see. And there was a prophecy by Rivka, we know this. The Torah speaks about it. There's a prophecy by Rivka. Yaakov and Esav, while they were in the uterus of Rivka, were battling it out, right? And I'm being brief about this, obviously, and so on. They were battling it out. So Rivka went to the house of Shem Ve'ever, where obviously they had the gift of prophecy, and they told her prophetically. Now remember something about a prophecy. A prophecy basically must come true because it is the word of God, you see. And they told her several ideas, that there are two great nations, right? And both of them will be very great. Each one will oppose the other, where one of them will always be greater than the other, and so on. But the ending is very interesting, where it says, Rav Yavoi So'ir, that the older one, which of course was Esav, will serve the younger. Now what you have to realize something, that's a prophecy. That means it must happen. You see, that the older must serve the younger, which tells us that the relationship between them is what? Where one serves the other. It's not like each one will go off on his own, and get a job or have a career or whatever and live independent lives. No, the relationship is that they are tied together, you see. But what is the relationship? The nature. The nature is where one, the older one, which turned out to be Esav, must serve the younger. And that is a prophecy in the Messianic era. We have to realize that that last statement of prophecy is a Messianic statement, right? That's what's going to happen at the end of time, because it's the fourth prophetic statement, and therefore it's a prophecy which must happen, which is amazing. But then we find it's incredible that Esav, serving the younger, Esav is killing the younger, right? That's what he's doing. He's subjecting the younger to persecution, tremendous suffering, you see. So what does that mean, he's serving the younger? So I had mentioned a long time ago what the depth of that is. That when the Torah says that he will serve the younger, it must be. But serving the younger, in what form? That is the question. And apparently it turns out that it's variable. And I mentioned, finally, that at 63, when Yaakov took the blessings of Yitzchak, right? The whole story told us of the deception and so on, you know. So Esav approached Yitzchak, his father, and said, okay, I'm here. So Yitzchak said to him, who are you in that sense? So he said, what do you mean? I'm Esav, your firstborn. And Yitzchak, of course, immediately realized, because he was blind basically, and he couldn't see him and so on. He just could recognize him, obviously, by his voice and statements and so on. So Yitzchak realized, wait a minute, you see, what does that mean? So he didn't want Esav to be removed from the tikkun process, which is the process to bring God back into creation and to change the different realities, as I once gave a whole shiur about. That's the essence of Judaism, the concept of changing one reality into the next, and so on, right? He wanted him to be part, because Yitzchak, even though he realized now that Esav was, if God allowed this to pass, that Esav is not fit, right? But he loved Esav, so he gave them, he fulfilled that prophecy of Rav Yavetzoy. But how? Because Esav is now completely removed from Judaism. So he told them that if Yaakov and his descendants, if they sin, then you will persecute Yaakov. Why? Because then Yaakov needs a kapara. He needs an atonement. Well, who's going to provide that? So he made the chief persecutor Esav. So in a certain sense, Esav does serve the younger by providing that persecution, you see, which was a very important concept. So he maintained the relationship of Rav Yavetzoy, except obviously it was a very negative relationship. But whatever it was, he was part of the tikkun process, and that gives Esav tremendous amount of merits. But he remained foreign to Judaism, which we know, until at the end of time when Yaakov, not the end of time, but when Yaakov finally catches up with Esav, after he leaves the house of Lavan, we know the story, right? In not Vayetzim, Vayishlach, right? So he meets Esav, and I brought this down in a whole shiur previously. Very important that Esav was near doing tshuva. And I mentioned there why, and so on, because he actually said to Yaakov, which is the main idea, right? That you will, that which is yours, it should remain yours. That which is yours be yours. And that was tshuva, where he admitted that the brachos, the blessings that Yitzchak gave Yaakov, now officially belong to Yaakov, and Esav is okay with that. That was tshuva. And what God wanted is that, or that was the beginning of a tshuva. And had Yaakov, which I mentioned in the shiur, it's worthwhile going back, Yaakov we should have understood that Esav can do tshuva, and all he has to do is give him Dinah, right, to Esav as a wife. And Dinah was a very strong figure. As I mentioned then, you know, she would go out to try to bring the daughters of the land of Israel closer to a belief in God and so on, you see. So instead, Yaakov did not recognize that for whatever reason, and he hid Dinah in a chest, and therefore Esav never got to see her, and there was no shidduch. And I commented on the whole understanding of what that basically means and so on. But what happened then is that was the beginning of the concept of Esav doing tshuva, repentance, right? Because Esav now realized that the blessings that Yaakov took, which is really the blessing of the whole concept of spirituality, is legitimate, right? And that's the beginning of tshuva, the recognition that maybe I was wrong and Yaakov is right. In any case, so God apparently said, okay, because you wanted to do tshuva, but you were denied the opportunity because Yaakov never gave you Dina, so Yaakov was punished with Shem, okay, which I spoke about and so on, right? And therefore, you will do tshuva. In other words, your Rav Yavo Itzoyer, you're serving the older will serve the younger, is now going to change its form from persecuting Yaakov when he needs an atonement into assisting Yaakov to do what? To clean up the mess. Because the job of Esav really was Ish Sodeh, to go and interact with the world, right? Yaakov's job is Yoshev Holam, to sit and bring down Torah, sparks of holiness of Torah. And Esav's job was to do what, right? Is to interact with the world and fight against the evil of the world. Ish Sodeh, a man of the field. That's what he really was. So therefore, in the end of time, you will be restored to your original job of Rav Yavetzoy. So we see remarkably that the job of Esav always remained in the tikkun process, but now it would change its form. But that change of form would only happen at the end of time. We now understand Esav, right? And so on. And then, of course, Esav became Edom, which is what the Torah says. Edom became Rome, which the Gemara says, the Talmud says, right? And of course I said then Rome became Christianity, and Christianity became Western civilization. So Western civilization is really Esav. You see, so therefore this change of form would happen at the end of time, at the beginning, what's called the Aschalta de Geula, the beginning of the Messianic era. That's it. So it's interesting, but I mentioned this, that about a month after he came down from the escalator saying he would run, for whatever reason, I realized, wait a minute, he is Esav doing tshuva. And therefore, he will do incredible things for the Jewish people. And not only that, but he will win. Because this is Rav Yavetzoy. You see, I don't care about all the opposition to him. He will win. And I began giving shurim about that and so on. You know, of course, I encountered a lot of opposition and doubts of my sanity, whatever. But in the end, of course, he won, because that's the plan. But who is Trump? So Trump, in the beginning, is ultimately a Gilgul of Esav, doing the job of Esav, Rav Yavetzoy, which is the real form that Esav should have done at the end of time. That's really what it is. As such, he's a Gilgul of Esav, but really he's a Gilgul of one of the greatest forms or incarnations of Esav, and that is Marcus Aurelius Antoninus, who was a Roman emperor, and he was incredible friends, and he loved Rabbeinu HaKodesh, Rabbi Yehuda Nossi, right? He loved Jews, and so on, without going into the Gemara, which I had mentioned in previous shurim. So therefore, and he was Antoninus, of course, Marcus Aurelius, a Roman emperor, and the President of the United States is an emperor of Rome, because the U.S. is part of Esav, right? Part of Edom, part of Rome, and so on. And that's basically who he is. So that's who Trump is. He is really a messianic figure. Of course, he's not the Mashiach, he's a guy. But he is a messianic figure in terms of Edom or Esav. Right, that's who he is. In fact, I once mentioned that the gematria of Donald Trump is 424, which is the gematria exactly of Mashiach ben David. Not that he's the Davidic Messiah, of course not, but that he is part and parcel, right, a very important part of the actual messianic process. So he is a non-Jew who's part of the process of bringing the Mashiach. And there are, and so on. And he is apparently the major one, because he's the one that has to assist Yaakov. But who's Yaakov that he will assist? And the answer is Mashiach ben Yosef. And that's really what his job is. His job in that capacity is to remove evil from the world. Ishadeh, right, that's his job. To confront evil, to defend the Jewish people against, right, the enemy, the antagonism, the hatred of the world. You see, he is that figure. And that's really what Mashiach ben Yosef has to have before he can embark on his own mission, which isn't confronting the world so much, although that's part of it, but the major mission of the Mashiach ben Yosef is to bring the Jewish people to holiness. Because you have to understand, these are the steps. Esav will bring the world from bad or evil to good, you see. But the Mashiach ben Yosef's job, his essential job, and that's why he's an assistant of Yaakov, which is Mashiach ben Yosef. And the Mashiach ben Yosef's job is to bring the Jewish people, right, from good to righteousness, which is much greater than good. And then from righteousness to spirituality, which is a whole different level. And then from spirituality to holiness, you see. And then ultimately from holiness, and that's the Mashiach ben David, right, to what? To divinity, right? Those are the stages of redemption. But we understand exactly where Trump fits, to assist the Jews in confronting the world and changing the world into a much better place to remove the evil, which is remarkable. And that's the job of Esav. Ish Sodeh. Makes sense, which is incredible. And that job is being filled by Donald Trump, you see. And I basically realized that in 2015. And so far, it's remarkable. He won. He won the presidency, you see. But I had mentioned something very important. Okay, so he lasted 4 years. Great. And he did a fabulous job. He confronted everybody, which was astounding, even though it was contrary to the interests of the United States. He confronted the UN. It was incredible for somebody to go back into the history, what he did to the UN, right? He confronted, right, the Democratic Party. He confronted the Arabs, Ishmael, right? He made Jerusalem the capital. He gave recognition to the state of Israel, right? And not only that, he recognized the Golan. And he actually began to bring Ishmael in the form of the Arabs as a friend, as an ally to Israel. You realize what that means? The amazing thing is he never even got the Nobel Prize, because what he pulled off is beyond belief, and so on. But in any case, and that's his job, like I said, is to confront the world and to go from bad or evil to good. So it was incredible what actually Esav did in the form of Trump. However, I mentioned there's something wrong. What was that? Because that was only for 4 years. And not only that, he made America prosperous. He brought them tremendous amount of, great things, wealth, job opportunities. Everybody was making money. I'm not going to go into all the incredible things. He's probably one of the greatest presidents in terms of the good and the benefits that he brought America, you see. And we all know that. And then all of a sudden, he lost. And I mentioned why in a previous shir, that there's a problem. And we find this problem in Egypt by Moshe Rabbeinu, which is the forerunner of Mashiach, Moshe. Why? Because we see that Moshe Rabbeinu, who was the Mashiach in his time, he came to rescue the Jews from the 49 levels of evil, Memtesh Shari Tumah, right? So God actually sent the Mashiach himself in the form of Moshe Rabbeinu to redeem the Jews from Egypt. But all of a sudden, Paroi, he ignored Moshe Rabbeinu's statement that set the Jews free, and he issued a decree which was incredibly difficult, right? The decree of straw, the Gzera straw, where he had the Jews, in order to make bricks, you need straw, apparently, and he wouldn't give them the straw anymore. They have to go into the fields in the middle of the night and collect it. And they had no flashlights. You have any idea what that meant? No sleep. It was a nightmare for months. Why did God do that? After the Mashiach came, and I said, and the answer to that is what? Is that because the Satan is screaming. And remember, the Satan is an angel that represents justice, Midas Hadin. So God cannot kill the Satan. He can't dismiss him. He has to answer the charge. And the Satan is saying, right, he's prosecuting and saying, wait a minute, they don't deserve this. I understand you want to try to save them, but come on, the Messianic era is an unbelievably majestic and glorious era. They don't deserve this because of the sinning. They're at the 49th level of Tumah, sinning. So God said, you're right, therefore I have to satisfy justice. And what did he do? He allowed Paroi to issue the decree of straw. That's why. So all of a sudden, for months, the Jews had to undergo terrible suffering after the Mashiach came. And that's the clue. That means if Trump is the beginning of the Messianic era, by acts of doing tshuva and confronting evil for the sake of the Jewish people, right? Then wait a minute. It's the same idea. The Satan is prosecuting. And he's saying, wait a minute. They don't deserve this. In fact, the whole world doesn't deserve the Messianic era. There's an enormous amount of sinning in all its forms, right? There's what he called heresy and so on. And there's all the sinning, LGBTQ. I don't want to go into all the sinning of mankind, the pursuit totally of materialism and so on. No spirituality, no belief in God, and whatever, and so on. Besides all the cruelty that goes on without getting into all of that. So therefore, there's a tremendous satanic prosecution in heaven. That's what we see. So God said to the Satan, you're right, and I have to therefore increase enormously the suffering, not only of the Jews, because the Messiah is for them, basically for them, but for the entire world. And I have to, as I said, enormously increase the suffering. So what did God do? He brought COVID, right? And now we understand. So what COVID did is it destroyed the incredible accomplishments of Trump, you see. And therefore, not only that, but enabled Biden, who's an absolute misfit. I mean, man, it's just beyond belief. You know, maybe if I said this 4 years ago, you'd say, what do you mean? He was 29 years old and became the Senator of Delaware. Well, we looked at the 4 years. This man single-handedly, with Harris, his vice president, destroyed the United States. It's hard to believe the amount of destruction, damage that this one man did in his quest. And he's delusional because he thinks he was a great president. But I don't want to go into that at all now. But this man is completely delusional, you see, you know, in terms of what he did and so on, which I mentioned last week's year about who should you vote for, the sins of Biden and Harris and so on, how many people died because of them and so on, needlessly and so on. But in any case, so God said that what? That he brought COVID and Biden, and COVID allowed Biden to hide in his basement. So nobody realized who this guy is, you see? And therefore he won the presidency, and this country has suffered in an incredible way, you see. But that can only go on for a certain amount of time. If you look at Moshe Rabbeinu, the straw decree went on for a certain amount whatever the amount of months it went on. But when justice was satisfied, right, so God said to Moshe, okay, now it's time. And that began the 10 makas, the 10 plagues against Egypt. Each one was incredibly miraculous because the Jews had now earned the merit to receive Moshe Rabbeinu as the Messiah, right? And to receive the Or Rishon, the Messianic light, which was the Luchas Rishonos, the first tablets. They received the right for that, and so on. Well, that's what's happening now, you see. So this is what is happening. But I want to tell you something. What God has done is really, in many ways, very interesting. You see, what we're looking at isn't just a fight between Democratic Party and the Republican Party. Don't even kid yourself about that. It has nothing to do with that. It's not even the war between, as I said, the progressives, right, and the traditionalists. It's not even that. What is it? It is the last fight of good and evil, right? Because we are looking, as I said, the beginning of the end of evil in order for the Mashiach ben Yosef to come, right? And therefore, this is the ultimate war of good and evil. Now remember, I once said a long time ago that when God decides to take out evil, He will allow evil completely free reign. You do whatever you want. Why? Not only it satisfies justice in order to equate, justice, satisfy the justice, as I've said, but God now will demonstrate His might against evil. Well, if He's going to demonstrate His might, then He wants to make evil unbelievably powerful. You see, unbelievably powerful, and give them every measure, right, of the ability to win. So when He takes them out, that will reveal the unbelievable might of the Rabbanu Shalom. That's what it means. At the end of time, one of the reasons why evil is so successful in all its forms is because God now wants to demonstrate. It is the fight of good and evil. He wants to demonstrate, I want to show you who I am. So what I'm going to do is make you an unbelievably strong person, or force, or movement, and so on. Because when I take you out, which I'm going to do, right, then people will bow their heads and say, God is truly the Almighty, infinite power, because look what He did, you see. That's what happens when this is the end. What did God do? He allowed the Democratic Party, the evil Biden, Harris, the Democratic Party, the progressives, the liberals, the left, to assume unbelievable power and dominion, which is what we know that they've had for the last 4 years. Now you understand why. Because He's going to take them out. And therefore when He does, okay, I'm going to let you be Mr. Universe, to use an example, right? And then when I come in the arena, I'm going to knock this guy out in a nanosecond, Mr. Universe, or maybe I should say, a 10th degree black belt, depending on what your form of enormous strength is, whatever, and so on. And that's why people don't understand, or they can't believe, where did they get this power from? They're not all of America. How can a group like these people, the Democratic Party, have such power of dominion over the entire United States, 330 million people, you see? And therefore they have power over the entire globe. We know that. When America is the power of the entire world. Where do they get it from? And the answer is, because that's part of the decree, right? When God says, it's going to be over, and therefore I'm going to let them do whatever they want. And also there's another idea that God wants to show mankind, you see, that if I let mankind do whatever He wants, I want to show you how bad they can become. This is a demonstration of how bad man can become when he's given full permission to choose whatever he wants to do without any obstacle. Right. That's another reason. In any case, that the last 4 years with Biden and Harris has been an enormous demonstration of absolute power, incredible, and so on, you see. And not only that, that power of the Democratic Party, and this is where you really begin to see, and so on, is what they've done to Trump. It's beyond belief. Nobody has ever witnessed in history of America what they did to a former president. I mean, think about that, what they've done to this guy. 91 felony indictments. For what? You see? And not only in terms of the indictments itself and so on, right? And so on, but they try to assassinate him twice. They try to bankrupt him, send him to jail. You see, they tried everything to destroy this man and send him to jail for the rest of his life, unimpeded. It's incredible how they got away with all this. And this guy's a former president, you see. The question is, what gave them the ability and the power to do this? You see, and the answer is the Ribbono Shel Olam, because this is part of the fact that he's giving incredible might to the enemy, the evil party, the Democratic Party, and the manifestation of that, of course, is Biden and Harris. That's why, because this is the power and the might that he has given the enemy, the evil, the Democratic Party, to show, look how powerful they are. But guess what? I'm going to wipe them out, and that will demonstrate who I am. That's why they have exhibited a power which we cannot even begin to understand. And the power is not only to rule America and to come out with these ridiculous ideas to take over capitalism and so much of the freedom of America. They have tried to destroy Trump. Right. Because God wants to demonstrate, look how powerful they are. But when I get started, watch what I will do to them, which I will talk about. See, we now begin to understand the whole rationale of the entire plan. What is going on? You see. So I'm up to what they have done in the 4 years of Biden and Harris. Very interesting idea, because remember, it's really the final battle. And that has tremendous implications and so on. We now come to the end, but here's the problem. Did you ever wonder, how is it possible that Harris and Trump are neck and neck? Is that possible? It doesn't make sense when you think about that. She has every reason to understand that she's completely disqualified from being a president. She has nothing in her history to indicate that she's done nothing. And she herself said she wouldn't change anything with what Biden did. Not only that, she said that she was part of every decision that Biden made. You see? So if a woman has done so much evil, right, and so much ridiculous progressiveness, has nothing to show for anything. Not only that, when she talks, it's a word salad. I mean, what do you need to see that this woman is completely incompetent? So how could you be neck and neck with Trump? It's almost inconceivable. And the answer is, I will tell you, because that's the power of the Sultan's prosecution. That's how good his prosecution is. Right. That he's saying the Jews don't deserve anything. And that becomes a major problem. I mean, there's no problems to the Ribbono Shel Olam, obviously, but it becomes a major challenge, so to speak, kaviyochol, that the Ribbono Shel Olam has to overcome the argument. But if she's neck and neck with Trump, when it's so obvious that this woman is a complete dud, nitwit, imbecile, nothing, you see, then how is it possible she's neck and neck? And the answer is because the power of the Sultan's argument is so great that he has the power, you see, to get America somehow to give so much power to the left and the progressives and the Democratic Party. Right. Look, the Democratic Party doesn't have this power by itself. They can only have it if they have permission, min hashamayim. It has to be don't fool yourself. It has to have a heavenly permission to be neck and neck with Trump. And when you think about the fact that it's so obvious that there's nothing there, she's an empty suit. So how's this possible? Right? That human beings should be so stupid. Right? And the answer is because that's the power of the kitrug when the Sultan is winning. What happens then? If it's neck and neck, it was amazing that polls could not differentiate who's going to win. They've never seen such a parallel, how close this election was. Because that's how close the Sultan was to winning. You have no idea. It reminds me by Kriyas Yamsuf, when God was going to split the sea and then drown all the Egyptians. So the angel said, what do you mean? The angel of Egypt said, wait a minute, how can you do this to my people, the Egyptians? Because every nation has a defending angel, right? The Jews worship idols and so do the Egyptians. So what do you want from the Egyptians? Why are you destroying them and not the Jews? You see? So he was overcome. But that angel almost succeeded in wiping out the Jewish people. This wasn't some type of, it's a nice story. You don't understand. That angel, with his argument, was unbelievably powerful. And if it wasn't for Michael going and grabbing one of the babies that were put into the wall that the Egyptians killed, right? We could have lost the argument. And that would be the end of the Jewish people. You don't realize how close the Jews were to destruction. Fortunately, they won. And obviously the Egyptians were destroyed at the splitting of the Red Sea. So, by the fact that the polls could not distinguish who's going to win means that in heaven, the kitrug is awesome. And there's a good chance that we will lose. Now, that doesn't mean we wouldn't have the Messianic process. Of course not. But it means it would have been pushed off. You see? Or it means something else. That something else has to be done to give merit or atonement to the Jewish people. And I will tell you, there are 3 things that have been going on. Okay? 2 of them are obvious. One of them will shock you. I believe, and this is my belief, that saved the Jews. One was October 7th. Okay? Because the Sultan was screaming and saying, look what the Jews are doing. They're sinning on Shabbos and Shmini Atzeres. This is what they're doing, a music festival, and so on. And not only that, the sins of the Jews, there's so much sin, aschinam in Eretz Yisrael, right? And we know it's been going on for a year against Netanyahu and against the Haredim, right? They can't learn, they want to be drafted. I don't want to go into all the sins that the Sultan recounted, okay? But believe me, Israel was really in a terrible posture. But October 7th was a kapora of massive amounts. So that was one. Okay. The second, did you notice how many tzaddikim, righteous people, how many rebbes, how many Rosh Yeshivas, how many Talmidei Chachomim have died since COVID started? Have you noticed that? Why? Because a tzaddik's death is a kapora. We know that from Miriam, because the parsha of Miriam, right, is right next to the Paraduma. So from there we learn that when Miriam died, that was a tremendous kapora for Jews. That's the learning that we learn, and so on. See? Why is the death of a tzaddik a kapora? Because it satisfies the judgment. Because how does it satisfy? Because it says, since you rejected spirituality by sinning, therefore I will take away the opportunity to be spiritual. And that is a punishment. You see? Because you have rejected the ability to be spiritual, so your punishment is that I will make it even harder for you to be spiritual. In any case, therefore tzaddikim are taken away, and that is a tremendous kapara. So that is number 2, all these people. Then there's a third idea, which is my idea, but I will tell you what I really believe happened, and this is shocking. You see, Chaim Berlin, Yeshivas Chaim Berlin, is a very popular, very well-known, and one of the bastions of Torah in Brooklyn and among the entire Torah world. They just lost their Rosh Yeshiva, who was 65 years old. But if you read about his biography, this man wasn't an ordinary Rosh Yeshiva. He was really an up-and-coming gadol, a real gadol. This man had phenomenal midas. You'd have to read the biography of this man and so on. He was a tremendous Talmud Chacham. He knew all over Torah. It's remarkable, his grasp of Torah. He probably had a photographic memory or whatever, okay? And he was a Sephardi. That's really what he was and so on, He was from, as far as I remember, Moroccan descent. But he was the son-in-law of Rav Aaron Schechter, who was the former Rosh Yeshiva of Chaim Berlin. Okay, but he wasn't just a Rosh Yeshiva of a yeshiva, because Chaim Berlin is a community that is one of the bedrocks of Torah in New York City, right? And therefore of the entire Torah world. It's not merely just Chaim Berlin, right? So therefore, he was a father. He was the upcoming hope of the entire Chaim Berlin community. What happened? Okay, so this man is a very great person, and he died Sunday right after Sukkot. So I said to myself, it is incredible what the Ramchal did. Who mourns him? Or what is the real suffering? So obviously people think, well, it's Chaim Berlin, because he was the Rosh Yeshiva of Chaim Berlin. He was the hope of Chaim Berlin, right? So obviously they mourn him, and it was terrible, the crying and the suffering, of course, and so on. You see, but they're not the real ones who mourn him, or I should say they are the real ones. But who are the essential ones? And the answer is the Torah itself mourns him, because the Torah itself needs Talmidei Chachamim, right, to project, right, and to make public the beauty and the wisdom of the Torah, of God's Torah. It's the living entity called the Torah that mourns him, right? And to lose a person of this caliber is, you cannot replace him. Not now, you see? So who can even begin to grasp the mourning of the Torah itself? And of course, if the Torah mourns him, then what's behind that? The Shekhinah. Because the Shekhinah needs people who represent the Torah, and there's so few of them left, because so many Gedolim, Rebbes, Rosh Yeshivas, Rabbonim, and lay people who are tremendous Talmidei Chachamim, or whatever, and so on, they also died. You see? So who's left? So the Shekhinah mourns him. So the question is, wait a minute, why would God do that? Right before the elections? What does all this mean? You see? So I realized, and I said, he was the clincher that gave the kapara to Klal Yisrael. I believe he was taken as a kapara to move the kitrug and to make sure the Sultan loses. That was the ultimate kapara. You see, that's what I believe, because the event happened at such a time. And I want to tell you something. It happened almost a year to the day of Shmini Atzeres of last year. This was another October 7th, except it wasn't in the form of Jews dying. It was in the form of a person who could have been a Gadol B'Yisrael and done enormous things for the Torah of Klal Yisrael and advanced the process. So it's amazing when you think about it. And it happened so close to the election day, which is the finalization of what? Of the Din Torah in Shemayim, right? Because what would happen on the election day if Harris wins, it will be the destruction of America, right? And if Trump wins, you don't even begin to realize what kind of salvation that is for America. And it's not related only to America, make America great. And I will show you, it's far greater than that. It's almost unheard of. In any case, so I believe he was taken as a major kapara to get Klal Yisrael over the hump. You see. So in any case, what has happened is this. So when you think about that, so here we come now to the election day. So I've tried to explain certain major ideas and so on. But I want to show you the power that God has given to the Democratic Party. And I've explained why. Because this will enormously magnify the power of God. You realize who has gone against Trump? The USA, right? The DOJ, the Department of Justice. The whole department is against Trump. You know how powerful, how many prosecutors they have? They have gone against Trump. The FBI, the CIA, the NSA, right? All of them. The IRS, the Secret Service, they almost let him die. That's how bad they were, right? The whole White House is against, right? The courts is against him, right? And you're looking at the media and the corporations. You have any idea what this is? There's 10 or 11 phenomenal forces arrayed against Donald Trump. That's the whole U.S. government. That's the might of the whole U.S. government. How in the world did Trump survive? No man could survive that. Now you begin to understand the permission that God has granted the left and the progressives, the evil of Esav, right? Because God is going to take them out in a way they don't even begin to comprehend. So therefore he gives them unmitigated, right, power to array the entire U.S. government against Trump, which is phenomenal. And what do we see? How in the world did he survive this onslaught? It doesn't make any sense. No man can survive the assault and the onslaught of the entire government of America. It's beyond belief. And then Iran wants to assassinate him. But God protected him. So it's like God is saying, well, I challenge you. It's interesting to hear a Bosco come out and say, okay, America, I have given you power and dominion and reign. Do what you want. Let's see how good. Reminds me of Titus when he destroyed the Beis Hamikdash, and he did certain terrible sins. So God said, okay, you think that you are in control, whatever, I will show you what I can do. In any case. And he killed, of course, he destroyed Titus and so on, right? So what God is saying to the Democratic Party, okay, unleash everybody. Let's see what you can do. And they did. They unleashed the entire U.S. government. And you can't even imagine what the power or what the threat is of that. You're finished. You're dead and buried. Somehow Trump survived. Not only survived, you can actually see that the Rebbeinu Shalom protects him. How? Look at the major mistakes. Every indictment is dismissed from Trump. You realize what that is? Every indictment has now been thrown out. You see, 2 assassinations. One assassination is a miracle that is revealed to the entire world. That bullet missed him by 1/4 of an inch. And he said himself, there was a 1 in 20 million chance that could happen, that he would move his head and look at the wrong side, which he never does. What a miracle. It's an open miracle. And people don't understand this. You see? Not only that, the guy's 78 years old. He made 4 stops in the last day. He's 78 years old. Where does he get the stamina? It's like he can't be stopped. Where does he get the energy? A man in his position should have had 15 heart attacks already. You see? Because of the stress. Not only is he okay, but he's able to run around. I mean, do you have any idea how many rallies he's gone to in the last several months, ever since he was, chosen and so on, and the mistakes that they've made, terrible mistakes. One of the biggest mistakes that she made, she never gave interviews. So everybody realized she's a dud. She's hollow. There's nothing there. She's an empty suit. And not only that, she should have picked Shapiro, which meant that she could have maybe won Pennsylvania. And that was the beginning of her downfall. And with Pennsylvania could have come other swing states. Instead, she picks a nobody, a person who's obviously deranged in some way, besides how evil he is, what he did to his state and so on, Minnesota, whatever, right? Tim Walz, whatever his name is she normal? But she had no free will. She had to. So she picked the wrong guy to be a VP, you see, or her VP. And I get a kick out of this. Look how God protects Trump. When Trump spoke at the Madison Square Garden, so he had a comedian. That comedian really made a stupid remark. I mean, it was incredible. I mean, where's this guy Seichel? His intelligence, obviously. So all of a sudden, hey, the Democratic Party was now handed a gift. They can now accuse him, Trump, of being a racist, right? Which is no good, because he needs the Hispanic vote, and he doesn't want people to think, right, that Trump is a racist. So God said, don't worry, I'll protect you. So Biden comes out a couple of days later, right, and it says the same thing that this comedian says, that Trump supporters, all 74 million of them, are garbage. Why would a man say that? Is he stupid? How can you say that? So all of a sudden, instead of having the ammunition to go after Trump because of what this comedian said, they were now trying to defend Biden and his ridiculous remark. You see, who made Biden say that? It's not Teva. God made him say it. And all of a sudden, that took away the entire accusation right before the election. I mean, it's unbelievable what God has done for Trump. How many ways he saved the man. Do they recognize this? No. But I have to bring it out. You have to understand that this is all God. This has nothing to do with Trump, except he voluntarily, and he wants to, of course, campaign. But look at the miracles, how you can count them, you see? In essence, what is it happening, right? Which is interesting, is God is saying, hey, do whatever you want. Throw at him whatever you want. It's not going to work because you don't realize something. I run the show. And the only vote that counts is mine, not yours. And you don't realize to what extent I will destroy you. And that's with all the unbelievable armaments and weapons. You've weaponized the entire United States government, everything. Against Trump, it won't help you. It reminds me very much, and that's really what we're looking at, After everything is said and done, and the Egyptians go through the 10 makas, right? The 10 plagues, right? All of a sudden, there's an event that occurs. It's called Kriyas Yamsuf, right? There is the major army of Pharaoh, 600 of his best chariots, right? They were going to kill the Jews. Wasn't the problem, because they have swords, and what did the Jews have? Nothing, right? So not only does Pharaoh have the ability to kill the Jews, right? But the Jews are trapped against the sea. Well, what's their escape route? There is no escape route according to natural means, which means that according to nature, they're doomed to die. And they realize that. That means they need a miracle of God, right? And what did God do? What he needed is some type of merit, which he got, either from Nachshon or from the fact that the Jews believed ultimately that God would save them. And God did what nobody ever saw in history, and that is to split a sea, which is beyond belief. To split a sea, and according to the Medrash, he did much more than that. He made 12 different paths, and so on, without getting into that and so on. You see, because who are we talking at? You see, God doesn't care if it looks like you're finished. You see, He will save you. I believe that what's equivalent to the splitting of the Red Sea is the U.S. government arrayed against Trump, trying to destroy him to the extent where a quarter of an inch closer to his head would have killed him. You see, that is the power and the might of the Rebbeinu Shalom, which, when you think about it, is absolutely incredible. You see, now we understand why they have so much power and why they've been able to get away from it or to execute this power and so on. And now, let's take a look. You should know one thing. In a certain sense, I had a worry because, look, ultimately speaking, it looks like God is going to bring the Mashiach, which is a cataclysmic event. I mean, this happened only once in history. But you never know, and I realized that the Satan has an unbelievable prosecution going on, or else they would never be neck and neck. And the Democratic Party would never have this power. So that's how close the Jews are to losing this opportunity. And they've lost many, many opportunities for the Mashiach come. Purim and so on, many opportunities and so on. So there was only one thing I was hoping would save us, and it did. There's a pasuk in Nach, and here's what it says. It says, Berega kotna zaftich, for one small second I will abandon you. It looks that way. Uberachmim gedolim, but in extreme mercy, right? Compassion, right? Akapsech, I will gather you. That means what saved the Jews is not even dinim, right? Dinim ultimately did not save the Jews. Even with the kaporas that were provided, which I had mentioned and so on. The truth is, you needed mercy and compassion. God had to overrule the attribute of absolute judgment, right? Uberachmim gedolim akapsech, right? And therefore we won. And that's exactly what happened. In fact, that's one of the greatest rachmim displays of the mercy and compassion of God that we've ever seen. It's unbelievable. You see, and I will tell you something else which is very important. Do you ever wonder, Purim, why do we celebrate Purim 2 days? Why? It was one war. One war, it ends, and you celebrate it. What was the last day of the war? The last day of the war was the 15th day of Adar. Well, okay, fine. So you celebrate. Everybody should have celebrated the 15th of Adar. Why is there a 14th at all? Why are there 2 days? Ever wonder? And the answer to that is what? Because the Jews realized something happened in Purim that doesn't usually happen. And therefore deserves 2 days. Why? Because even if we destroy the enemy, right? So we destroy the enemy, right? The branches of the army that fights, right, for whatever side, right? But you don't destroy the headquarters. You don't destroy the root of evil. They will come back the next day and haunt you. You see? Even if you cut off the tentacles of the snake, but you don't chop off the head. But the Rebbeinu Shalom v'nahapachu allowed the Jews to destroy the head of the snake. On the 14th day of Adar, right, they destroyed the branches, which is the kingdom itself, all the people that wanted to kill the Jews. But on the 15th day, they killed the enemy in Shushan. And Shushan is the town of Amalek, of Haman. And they hanged Haman and his 10 sons. Yeah, but wait a minute. That is the head of the snake. Hydra. That's the head. So they realized, wait a minute. God has performed 2 miracles for us. He allows us to destroy salvation of the actual people who fight the war. But he allowed us to kill the head of the snake. Therefore, we have to celebrate 2 days in recognition. And that's why we celebrate both 14th, which is the entire kingdom, and we celebrate what? We celebrate Shushan Purim, which is the headquarters, which is the head of the snake. You see, that's what God did for Trump. How? Because there's something that's really in many interesting ways. What did God do to the Progressive Party? It wouldn't be sufficient, right, where Trump would win. It's not enough. Because what that would mean that he would win is he won the electoral votes. But then the Democratic Party, if they don't win the popular vote, they could always say, well, he won on basically on a constitutional technicality. But really the American people are for us. We have the moral right. We have the moral right. And we are superior morally because we got the majority vote, the popular vote, you see. Interesting. That's why it was critical for not only win the electoral votes, but the popular vote, you see. So they can't claim anything. Even the population of America, the majority, have voted against them, which is a complete rejection. They crushed the Democratic Party. And God did that. With together, the Democratic Party, with everything they try to do to Trump, God crushed them. Why? Because you're looking at the might of God. And not only that, but to make sure that Trump can do his thing, the Senate now becomes part of Trump. The House becomes part of Trump. And 7 swing states become part of Trump. They crushed the Democratic Party. That's what they did. They destroyed the Democratic Party. The entire moral fabric, you see, of the Democratic Party was rejected and crushed. And that's an incredible, absolute victory of God. They threw everything they could. Think about this. They threw every weapon of the entire U.S. government at Trump. Not only did it fail, but Trump, God, crushed them. Could you understand what that means in terms of the might of God? No, we can't. You see, because that tells us a very important idea. What is that idea, right? That Trump has a mission. That's what it tells us. Let me tell you something that happened to me several months ago. Okay, somebody interviewed me, okay, from a magazine. Okay, and during the interview they asked me, well, you know, I was telling them my views and so on. So the person asked me, well, if you were in the same room as Donald Trump, and I was he asked me this, what would you ask him? Let's say you had the opportunity, if you met Trump and you were in the same room as Donald Trump, what would you ask him? Hey, you have a great opportunity, right? So I said, I will tell you what I would ask him. I would ask him, why did you think God saved you? You yourself know he saved you. Why? You see? Now, you think it's just to make America great? So I said to this guy, who, by the way, is one of the reporters that is there whenever there's an interview of the press staff, the press conference, he's one of the people asking Trump questions. So I said, do me a favor and ask Trump this question on behalf of myself. Okay, he didn't. Okay, 2 weeks later, he had that opportunity. So this reporter raises his hand and he says to Trump, by the way, why do you think God saved you? I think Trump was taken aback. So Trump says to him, please repeat the question out loud. That's what he said. Why? Because he probably wanted everybody to hear his answer. You see? So he wanted to make sure that everybody hears it. So he repeated the question out loud. You know what Trump answered? I'll tell you. What he should have answered was MAGA, Make America Great Again. Basically, that's his campaign promise. He didn't say that. Do you know what he said? He said, maybe God wants me to save the world because the world is going downhill. That is a Messianic answer. And I was very glad that I was the original guy that got a reporter to ask him that question. Because it's important for him to understand that your mission isn't to make America great only. That's part of it. Because then America will be the greatest nation, and everybody's going to want to curry favor with Israel to get back in your favor. It's going to be an unbelievable aliyah, ascent for the Jewish people and for the Mashiach ben Yosef. So he recognizes that there's a divine mission, not only for America, but for the entire world. And I'm very glad that I had the opportunity to raise that question for Donald Trump, and so on, In any case, that is what he said. You see, in any case, this is what's happening. Now, I want to tell you something interesting. Biden was thrown out as a candidate. And he will never forgive Obama, Pelosi, Schumer for throwing him out, because they're the ones who did it, right? And not only that, he actually thinks he could have won. And now that she lost, he's really livid with rage, although he has to make believe that he's not. But I want to guarantee you, he's glad that Harris lost. That's how angry it is at Harris. That's how angry it is at them for betraying him. You realize what they did to him? They threw him out. You have any idea what kind of busha that is? Right? This man is delusional. He thinks he wants to go down as one of the greatest presidents in history. I'm not even going to address his delusions and so on. He's probably one of the worst presidents in history and so on, But they disgraced him. They embarrassed him. You see? So that we know. Not only that, they put Harris in as a presidential candidate without one vote being cast. That's against democracy. In fact, it's unheard of. It never happened in U.S. history. Could you imagine the affront to Joseph Biden? So that's one. But God just now embarrassed or destroyed, crushed the entire Democratic Party. Right. So the question is, why did he bother throwing out Biden? Biden anyway would have lost. We know that. Why did he want to bring in Harris? So that she should be destroyed also. And there are many ideas. And I believe because both Biden and Harris have caused unbelievable suffering to people. And I mentioned all the suffering. The murder of 150,000 U.S. citizens from fentanyl. The human trafficking, slavery, right? The migrant crime. The people that are murdered, right? And the support of pain that people go when they go shopping. All of this, both of them are guilty of which is what I said in the last year. And who should you vote for? That's why. So he said, I'm not just going to punish Biden, right? I'm not just going to disgrace Biden. I'm going to disgrace Harris because she's going to lose not merely a simple loss, right? She's going to be swamped. It's going to be a landslide. And this is notwithstanding all the armaments and the weaponization of the entire U.S. government, right? So that's why he had both of them. But what does this mean for us? Very important idea. Let me tell you a very, very important idea. I once told you about the concept of the window. And the R Moshe Chaim Luzzatto talks about that at the end of time, in order to allow all this happen, it's like you're in a house and everything is closed and all the windows are painted black. But there's one window where the window is slightly ajar, open, and light comes in. And that light is the sparks of holiness that allow creation to exist. If that window itself would shut, the entire creation would annihilate instantly. And the problem is that as we get closer and closer to Mashiach, that window closes, but it will not shut. It can't shut, because if it's shut totally, the world, the universe, obliterates. So the question is, where is it standing? So here's the idea. Think about this argument. That window is shutting, But that's why there's so much evil in the world, right? Now you understand. Because the shutting of that window means a diminishment of the holiness of light that enables good to survive. As it goes lower and lower, more and more evil, right? And that window is almost at the end. But wait a minute. If that window is not at the end and it's still shutting, right? That means more evil should have happened, right? But wait a minute. That's not what happened. That means if that window still had room to go till it reached the windowsill, right? Then Harris should have won, because she would have produced much more suffering and evil. But that's not what happened. Trump won, and he crushed evil. That means that the window shut, and the gates that opened up the Messianic light opened, because that window cannot shut totally, or the world is annihilated. But when that window is about to shut, then the Messianic gates of redemption has to open to allow light to enter from another source. So wait a minute. If that window is still shutting, that means Harris should have won, because that means more evil should have come in. You see? But if Harris didn't win, not only did Harris not win, it was the exact opposite. This is one of the greatest victories of good ever known. And we know what Trump is going to do. He's going to change America. He's going to change the world. All the evil enemies are quaking in their boots. They're all shaking. And they all know what's going to happen. Not only is he going to make America great, he's going to end the Arab-Israeli war, right? Because he's going to tell Israel, just tell me what you need to destroy Hezbollah, Hamas. And he himself will go after Iran. Not only Israel, because they have taken American hostages. So where is the honor to American citizens that Biden completely neglected? Because Biden couldn't give a whit about American souls. Look what he did in Afghanistan. So Trump will say, and he probably even said it now, I think I'm not sure, but he may have called, he is going to call Iran. He said, okay, I want to tell you now, if those hostages are not released in a week or whatever, I'm going to come to get you. I'm going to wipe you guys out. I'm going to wipe out your oil wells, your nuclear facilities. I'm going to put an end to what you are doing, because you are creating havoc with the peace and tranquility of this world. And I will not tolerate that. Release the hostages now. You remember when Reagan won after Carter, right? And Iran had taken American hostages? They released the hostages even before Reagan became president, because they knew Reagan's not going to tolerate this. He's going to wipe out Iran. And he did. He wiped out their navy. They don't want this. You see? You have no idea what Trump is going to do to this world. So we are looking at a victory of good that has never been seen before, except by Mitzrayim or by Matan Torah and so on. This is Messianic, right? And this is a fulfillment of the Messianic process. Very, very important and so on. And it's great that Trump recognized this. But you have to understand what Trump is going to do. He's going to end the Arab-Israeli war permanently, because they're all afraid of him. He's going to give Israel whatever it needs to make sure it never happens again. And then Israel will be given permission and all the weapons they need. Not only that, he's going to bring Saudi Arabia together with Israel. And once Saudi Arabia, which is the main concept of Islam, that's the end of the Arab problem. Because then all the Arab nations will join, because they all want to be protected by by Trump. You see, he's going to change the world. He's going to make sure evil is destroyed. He's not going to tolerate any nonsense. And he's going to crush, we don't even know to what extent, the Democratic Party. Because they have committed against him not just opportunities, incredible evil. And if he doesn't punish them, he's making a tremendous mistake. Because these guys will never stop. They will stop him from exercising his presidency just like they did the first time. Because they are now in the mode of survival. They must destroy him. So therefore he has to not only punish them, because justice demands that they be punished for what they did, but they are the obstacle that he must get rid of. He's got to get rid of the deep state. He cannot slack off, or else he's making a terrible mistake. So we don't even know. He's got people studying on the first day what he's going to do. He's going to make your head spin on the first day of what he does to help America and to help the world. You see, that is Messianic. And after him, all right, that's when the Mashiach Yosef will come. Right. I believe we are in Aschalta de Geula. I believe that this election day begins in Cheshvan, the Aschalta de Geula, the beginning of redemption. And by the way, it has to start in Cheshvan. We used to call Cheshvan Mar Cheshvan, right? Bitter Cheshvan, because Cheshvan is the only month in the year that has no Torah holidays. Nothing. There's nothing in terms of a holiday in Cheshvan, and therefore it's called bitter Cheshvan. So Cheshvan complained to God, and he said, and Cheshvan said to God, wait a minute, it's not fair. I have nothing in me that the Jews can observe and do a mitzvah. So God said, don't worry. In Cheshvan will become the Messianic era will start, right, in your month. And therefore that will be the greatest month of all in Cheshvan itself. And that's the beginning of the secret of why Rachel Imenu died in Cheshvan. Because on her death was supposed to come down the Messianic light. Instead it turned to water because the world did not deserve it and they were drowned instead. You don't realize that Yud Aleph Cheshvan, which is the Yotzeit of Rachel Imenu, should have been the Messianic light. But I'm not going to get into that. It's a whole different shir and so on, you see. So Cheshvan is the appropriate time to start. And guess what? The elections were in Dalet Cheshvan. You see? It was Mamash and Cheshvan. And I believe that the elections itself is the beginning of such a victory of good over evil that it's Messianic. You see? In any case, I wanted to explain what is really going on. So I started from the beginning to give you the scope, the entire big picture of what has been going on. And you now understand things, I don't know if you ever understood before. You see, things that don't make sense, that we've never witnessed before. What started off Trump? The Goyig himself started off Trump, right? And the whole concept of Trump winning miraculously and then being removed because of satisfying justice, which is identical to Egypt. That's where the model is, and so on, right? And then all of a sudden, what they try to do is they exercise the power that has never been seen before. It's beyond belief, the power of the Democratic Party. And I explained why and what the logic of it all is and so on, And what has happened is beyond belief. Nobody can believe it. Of course, they're all saying, well, Trump ran a great campaign. Nonsense. It has nothing to do with his campaign. He doesn't even understand why he's still standing, let alone win to be the president. Because this is all part of the plan of God to assist, and therefore in the end, to assist Mashiach ben Yosef. And in the end, what we're going to see is unbelievable. The prophecy of Rav Yavoy Tzoy, the older will serve the younger in the right way. You see, it's just interesting that it's done not to a non-Jew, okay, but at least Esav is part of the Messianic process, part of the Tikkun process, you see, and therefore God will have rewarded Esav because he wanted to do tshuva, you see. So that Rav Yavoy is the indicator. When that happens in the right way, that is Aschalta de Geula. That is the beginning of redemption. And guess what? It happened on November 5th, Tuesday, 2024, which is astounding. And hopefully the Mashiach will come and we will all enjoy the restoration, not only of the end of the Golus, number one, but number two, the building of the Beis HaMikdash when the Golus is over. Number three, the return of the Shekhinah, the divine presence. And number four, is the restoration of Klal Yisrael to their Torah and the entry of Mashiach ben David and the reunification back to the Rebbeinu Shalom. you see, where God and the Jewish people will bond together in an embrace that will never be terminated. Let's hope it happens very quickly. Thank you.